And as it turned out, she certainly wasn't happy about it. Easily over 100 hands clasped Colcifer's arms, legs, waist, and locked her hands in place. Her thrashing and kicking became weaker as more glyphs activated by the second, responding to her increased desperation. More hands flowed from the floors and ceiling of the Nexus, apparently in response to her eyes taking on a blazing glow. Her gaze locking onto me. I could see her expression go cold as her eyes seethed amber-colored flames. Finally she blinked, and with each blink a portion of the arcane barrier flashed with sparks, 2 by 2 and only in places in front of me. Was she trying to kill me with her looks? Seriously? I really only ever thought that was an expression, but given Colcifer's nature, it shouldn't surprise me. But I mean, who wouldn't be surprised by real-life friggin' force blasts coming from a fallen angel? Surprised or not, I was confident I had the upper hand here. I crossed my arms and took a step closer to the wards encapsulating her, and she scowled while staring at me, slowing down her blinking, but visibly increasing the force of her attack. Sizzling sparks lit up as the wards flashed again, this time accompanied by an audible whump whump, whump whump, caused by the heavier blows. In response to her escalating struggle, more and more of these strange glyphs and mystical runes lit up in an instant, practically after every hit. I was beginning to crack a smile, just to piss her off like she had done to me on several occasions, when she suddenly unsheathed her wings. 2 distinct jets of crimson plasma flowed in arcs from her back. That made me raise an eyebrow at seeing that, as she usually keeps her wings concealed, and unveiling her wings in front of me meant serious business. Clearly I had triggered her. Her thrashing and struggling ceased entirely. Several more circles of warding materialized, shining bright red, green, silver and gold, all of them closing around her, decreasing the space within her containment significantly, each filling up with their own runes. Now I was starting to feel a sense of danger, though I had been pretty sure about the security and potency of the wardings, glyphs and containment spells. I was beginning to have my doubts. The void-crafted hands that restrained her lit up and began to glow with their own runes and glyphs. Nexus, restrain her wings as well. Her eyes widened as the Nexus obeyed my command, and her broken halo appeared, glowing intensely as it shimmered into existence. As it solidified, she began rapidly blinking at me, and to my utter surprise, a stream of flashes began to light up the walls wherever her eyes would look and blink. She rained volleys of strikes upon the ward's walls of light with unseen force. That soft sound grew into thunder, and it reverberated until the wards began to dim. Colcifer's voice echoed in my head, and I could feel the power of it slip through the many layers of carefully crafted, mystical warding. John, let Emmy out now, or I will force my way out, and you won't like what comes after. I acted foolishly, overconfident in the plans I had laid out before. Nexus, I said, then paused to look her in the eyes. Nexus, silence her. Immediately a hand with a golden ring on every finger phased out of the floor and floated towards her mouth. No, I refuse. 3 exclamation marks, and with those words, every hand restraining her wings disintegrated, and she began repeatedly speaking faster than humanly possible. Syllables, consonants, and sounds which human vocal cords could never reproduce charged the air in front of her. I was ready for anything. I thought, just before the lights in the Nexus dimmed, even the warding around the void spawn dimmed, and I kid you not, she shot lightning from her freaking mouth. Oh shoot. Only I didn't say shoot, as it overloaded ward after ward and caused each wall of light it struck to crackle and disperse. It continued pouring in an unending, unwavering force of destruction, peeling away every last sense of security I had. As one wall of the arcane warding remained between us, the divine beam of hate disappeared back between her beautiful lips, and I could see a smile forming as the gold-ringed hand clamped over her mouth. The runes around the last remaining ward wall didn't reform quickly, and I took this moment of silence to glance over my shoulder and check on the void-spawn soldier. It too had gone still. but watched me intently. I had just a moment to wonder why. Johnny Boy Colcifer whispered gently into my mind. Giggling, I had watched this, but I didn't wait for her to act. Nexus. Absorb all empty rooms not containing living or sentient creatures, arcane items, or mundane items. Redirect the power gained, and reinitiate Colcifer's containment starting at 110% the original maximum power in an instant. All wards snapped back into place. I could feel the power radiating off of the wards, humming a constant low tone. Colcifer shed a single, golden tear. The hands around her shone brightly, crackling and shaking as they exploded in a cluster of ground-shaking claps, blowing her hair every which way, making me drop my jaw in surprise. The fallen angel never flinched. Rather, she began slowly spreading her wings. The explosions died down, and I ordered the Nexus to cease its futile efforts at restraining her. As her wings reached their full size, I marveled at them. Truly a sight as beautiful as this is rarely ever seen. Colcifer's wings of crimson energy bent upward, curling back down toward her head. No, not just toward her head. They bent toward her broken halo as well. Tendrils of plasma wrapped around each of the 3 pieces of her halo, slowly pushing each piece closer together. Colcifer, if we still have a deal, if we are still a team, tell me now and I'll release you. Look, a show of good faith. I gave the order, and the ringed hand that clasped her mouth shut fell to the ground and faded back into the Nexus. This did nothing to quell the sense of dread which was crawling up my spine and buzzing at the back of my skull. Pathetic, John, tears of my own fell from my eyes as one word came to my mind. Before, it had merely been a feeling, a vague sensation, but at this moment the word crystallized into an almost audible voice. Danger, it whispered. I looked around, but the word must have come from my own mind. What? What danger? I asked out loud, like the biggest idiot you'd ever seen. Danger, the word was now a shout inside my mind. It became painful to look upon her beauty, upon her glory, and with a chorus of 3 voices, her halo was whole. She willed herself toward me, and as she approached the first of the wards, she caressed them with one of her wings, and one by one, they shimmered out. It was as if she had flipped some invisible switch. The last barrier remained, and she smiled at me again. Now, are you just going to stand there and stare? Or are you going to be a gentleman and open the door for me? Don't keep me waiting, she said in a sultry tone. I knew she didn't have to ask me to break the last ward, but I asked her anyway. Before I oblige, will you honor our previous contract? She laughed almost musically. Ha ha ha. Oh, silly John, of course I will. Ellipsis. On one condition, she said. I replied, what's your condition? She placed her hands on the ward wall. After you open the door, I want you to kiss me. Then I'll forgive you. I did as she requested. Nexus. Deactivate the containment around Colcifer. Now for this next part. Well, I've never been one to downplay how hot Colcifer is, and her more angelic form was definitely not a turn-off. Thanks for that. I needed a good stretch, and I haven't put my halo back together in ages upon ages. With that last sentence, her other wing released the halo and it broke back into 3 pieces before fading into the ether. With that, her wings withdrew from sight as well, and her feet touched the floor. She was back to her usual self, or so I hoped. Okay, so how do you want to do this? I asked. Just put your arms around me and give me a kiss. Sheesh. What? Is this your first time kissing an angel? Blushing, I embraced her and kissed her deeply. Ellipsis, let me give you something you'll be needing later. Before I had time to refuse, she deepened the kiss, but this was no mundane kiss. I felt a pulse of gut-wrenching fear spread throughout my whole body. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run and hide. Most importantly, I felt my strength return twofold. Fat lot of good that did me as I fell to the ground, inundated by the knowledge of the cosmic crap storm I had stirred up while I was free of my fear for so long. Oh, Oh God, no. But what have I gotten myself into? I cried, shook by the knowledge of what I was up against. Colciffer had given it back. She had given back my fear, and she used that kiss to do so. Doing this had caused her to appear somewhat diminished, less brilliant than before. You almost impressed me, John. You were this close. She held her forefinger and thumb about an inch apart. Ha! Okay, fine. So maybe I was just a little impressed. But now, what are you going to do about that assassin voice spawn over there? Now that you have your fear back, I'd be surprised if you could even look at that creature. She grabbed me by the ankle and dragged me toward the creature that had possessed the pizza guy, and of course I kicked and yelled at her to stop, to which she responded by hoisting me up and pressing my face lightly against the containment ward. No, please don't. I'm not even sure if what I said next made sense. I was gripped tight by the hand of doom, in my mind anyway. Flashes of realizations blooming in my mind's eye as I correlated everything I'd learned of demons, angels, and void-spawned horrors from between dimensions. The wailing sounds of this eldritch creature slammed into my awareness. Blend a hyena's laugh, grease on a hot griddle, and steel scraping against muddy slate. Its voice raked against brain. All I could think of was dying a terrible, senseless death. This thing knew what I was feeling. It fed off of the waves of fear spilling out of me, gulping down soup of negative emotions gushing from my skull, all while pushing increasingly grim visions into my mind's eye. At first didn't know I hadn't tried this before, but now I had figured out what was stopping it. Colciffer had been keeping my fear, feeding off of it herself, keeping it nurtured and alive. Sensing the shift of emotions on my face, she moved far too quickly for me even try to react. Colciffer lifted me higher against the wall of light and glyphs, my toes no longer touching the floor of the Nexus. Colciffer. What? What do you want from me? She smirked sensually. Johnny boy. Where'd Mr. Balls of Steel go? I know what that void soldier is doing to you, John. So do you now. I've taught you quite a few things in the time that we've been partners. Some things you obviously haven't realized yet. While she talked, her voice caused the visions to cease, as if she were blocking out the visions. My thoughts became clearer, but only for a moment, becoming fuzzy once again as she purposely took a long pause. She looked me up and down, and she watched me. Visions are still flooding that brain of yours. You see yourself being torn limb from limb, the fear pumping through your veins, all while you whimper helplessly. Well, John, won't you impress me like you used to, once upon a past life or two? As her speech stopped, just before the psychic wave of terror could engulf me, I sent a high-speed burst of subvocal shortcut commands to the Nexus. Code Judas times 0.5, intruder, big spender, suit up. In the blink of an eye, the Nexus around me began to coat my skin, encasing my whole body. Colciffer couldn't let go in time. Her eyes set ablaze as she readied her optic death blasts. But without that sliver of my soul, she was too slow to charge up and fire before the Nexus poured over her like concrete. You want to be impressed? Let's make a deal. If you aren't at least a little impressed within the next 3 minutes, I'll let you borrow half of my soul whenever you want. Do we have a deal? Her cloud fist burst out of the Nexus shell, raking across her encased face and clearing enough void stuff away for her mouth to become visible. The words "deal accepted, Johnny boy, you asswig," escaped Colciffer's sneering lips, seconds before she allowed herself to be entombed once more, encircled by layers of prismatic domes of light, wrapped within several centimeters or inches of Nexus-made, insanely durable material. I saw to it that the Void Spawn Scout was getting the same treatment. With one exception, I could care more about its comfort, but of course I elected not to. Completing its orders, the Nexus fell off of me and reabsorbed itself. I found myself standing upright, clad in my red zoot suit and matching red leather, wingtip shoes. Nothing wrong with fighting the darkness and looking your best while doing so. I joke more when I'm scared. It's a coping mechanism. Though my fear was pressing me to hurry, curiosity and confidence held me steady. Briefly admiring the make of the containment measures, I could see flashes of light illuminating the inside of the intruder's cell, causing the wretched thing to writhe wildly within its semi-sentient tomb of Nexus material. Nexus. Make my voice audible to all guests. The Nexus pinged and I assume it followed my command. Colcifer, I'm going to let you out. But remember we're on the same side. Ellipsis. Look, you do mean a lot to me. And you've always been there for me. I won't go back on my deal. Besides, ellipsis, I have about 1 minute left to impress you. I released all bindings and containment seals from her, trusting her to not rip me in half or blast me into wet chunks with her optic blasts, mind bullets or whatever the hell that was. I'm still not over that. BOOM. Thud 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 thunk sounds like one big explosion, followed by an uncountable number of other loud impacts, filled the chamber. I immediately dropped to the floor, twisting around to look at Colcifer, worried that she may have backstabbed me. Instead, she was looking up. My heart was pounding, still unfamiliar with how fear feels. I searched her face for any clue as to what in the void that sound was. She glanced at me, and back at the ceiling, cracking a faint smile on her sensual lips. She stayed silent, only crossing her arms. The Void Scout's containment seemed to be failing, and lighting in the chamber grew dim, flickering in certain areas. And though the temperature began to drop, what really concerned me was the continued impacts on the roof of the Nexus, which were followed by erratic, somehow desperate-sounding skittering sounds, like multitudes of chitinous legs scrabbling and scratching at the hull of the Nexus. I couldn't find the strength to stand as the Nexus made a discordant sound, displaying a 2.5-dimensional map of the outside. Ellipsis. I couldn't make out any of the shapes scrambling up top, but I saw enough to make me panic. The map displayed structural integrity as dropping slightly as the seconds ticked by. Pull yourself together. I slapped myself firmly, stood up and commanded the Nexus to safely make the roof transparent from the inside to the outside only. I'd rather know what was out there, as not knowing somehow seemed worse. What? I've seen these before. When ellipsis, Colcifer threw her head back and laughed. That's right. Sleep paralysis demons. Not technically demons, but whatever. The very same breed which preyed on you when you were just a boy. Only, in this place, you're on their home turf. You don't have to be dreaming to be a feast for them here in the void. Don't let them distract you from our deal. Minute's almost up. I turned to Void Wraith and its failing containment wards, and I could see globs of Nexus material sloughing off of it as it raked at its restraints. Listen, you Void simping shit juggler. You had a piece of me. Now it's time we got a piece of you. It's only fair, right, Colcifer? She grinned widely, in a sinister yet sexy way. I like where this is going, Johnny boy. Sounds peachy. Scree. 3 exclamation marks. The Wraith screeched its hatred at us, fighting its bindings all the more furiously, and making alarming progress. The chorus of scraping and tearing sounds of the void spiders clawing their way closer droned constantly in the background. I had no time to waste. Nexus. Recycle the prisoner and send more power to outer shell of Nexus. Let nothing go to waste, and record any obtainable residual memories from the prisoner. The floor below the grotesque Void Scout ripples, warping and changing until a gaping maw, wide enough to swallow a van, appeared beneath it. Rows of glistening, obsidian-like teeth lined the narrowing, nightmarish maw, emitting a faint glow between each tooth. Some I don't know what, reached out of the maw, and with hundreds of clawed, emaciated fingers latched onto the wretched creature that tried to assassinate me earlier, and yanked it into a jagged embrace. Sounds of it being mercilessly digested filled the chamber. Seconds passed after the terrifying maw had shut. The screams of the Wraith died out, and the lighting within the Nexus shone brightly once again. Nexus. Damage report. The Nexus hummed agreeably, then displayed the map once again. The damage showed that we had dipped just below 50% structural integrity, but now that number was swiftly climbing back to 100%. Then 99%, then back to 100%. Colcipher clapped, genuinely smiling now, then swiftly jumped on me. And of course she's, ellipsis, well, dressed in her usual fashion. Woohoo. Vicious. Uncharacteristically so. But indeed you handled pests shrewdly. I'm impressed. How about we celebrate? Her hand wandered from my upper back, lower, sliding to the front. Hey. Nope. I gently, but firmly pushed her off of me. You want to celebrate? How about you take my fear back? Hold on to it for a while. It's a win-win. She put one hand on her hip, and another under her chin in an exaggerated thinking pose. Ellipsis? You know, if I want to do that, it has to be done with a kiss. I sighed. Fine. Go ahead. Kiss me. Though only a meter or a few feet away, she blinked and appeared in front of me, grabbed the back of my head and kissed me deeply, and longer than I'm sure was necessary. MMFF. Okay. That's enough, right? I didn't feel anything. She feigned feeling hurt. You mean, you didn't feel the spark? The flame of passion between us? I think I know what she did. You, ellipsis, you just kissed me. You didn't take my fear back. She blushed, and in a sultry voice, she answered, bingo, Johnny boy. You need to hold on to that fear. You're just not as strong, metaphysically, without it. It's a part of you. I blushed, mainly because the reason I knew I still had fear was because I worried what Sandy would do to me if she found out about that kiss, ellipsis, or that other kiss. Shit. Well, what's your plan about those lovely critters up top? I paced around the floor of the main chamber inside the Nexus. The bulk of the skittering sounds would follow me no matter where I walked. Well, for starters, Nexus. Deactivate ceiling transparency and mute all outside noise. Ah, that's much better. After a few minutes of tidying up the chamber, I ordered the Nexus to simulate a 70s cafe inside the chamber. Colcipher and I sat across from each other, talking in between bites of lukewarm pizza. Colcipher, we're stuck in here for a while. Why don't we make use of the time and catch up on our arcane studies after a nap and after we figure out what to do about those sleep paralysis demons swarming outside? She snatched an olive off of the slice of pizza I was enjoying, juggling it with her tongue in a display of preternatural dexterity for a moment. Well, you're going to want to reconsider just dozing off for now. Ellipsis. You think paralysis demons are bad back in Earth Realm? Falling asleep here is practically inviting them to eat you whole. Damn. She had a point. I suppose she always has a point. I hope to update you fine folks further, much sooner next time. I do apologize. Ellipsis. Time and message transmissions work a little differently here in the Nexus. Thanks for keeping me company, and I'll be seeing you.